Hi everybody, Neil Martin, Natural Juice Junkie. I put a chat out on Facebook earlier just to see if anybody had any questions, so here's a little quick video just to answer some of those. So first up, I've got a question here from Kirsty that's asking about the best way to juice beetroot and saying that the beetroot that she's purchased from one of the supermarkets is pre-peeled. If it's pre-peeled, it almost certainly also means that it's cooked. And what you're looking for here is raw beetroot. So if you're finding that when you're juicing that, you're not getting a lot of juice from it, and you're maybe not getting the kind of color that you would expect to get from beetroot juice, then yeah, it's because it's cooked beetroot. So you need to hunt out some raw beetroot. It's certainly available in the sort of major 4 UK supermarkets when I was looking last week. In fact, one of them had a really good price on organic, so yeah, it's worth having a hunt around for that. But I suspect your issue there is that you're actually using cooked beetroot rather than raw. Next question, which was from Joe: does it matter if we swap a couple of the juices around due to lack of ingredients? No, not at all. If you need to adapt things slightly, if you can't find one of the ingredients and you want to substitute it with something else, that's fine, absolutely fine. And yeah, if you want to do the juices in a different order, maybe because of the ingredients, or maybe just because it fits better with your lifestyle to do it a certain way, then again, that's fine. That's fine. There's no issue with that at all. So Helen's asked, how much water should we be drinking, and are we allowed herbal teas? Herbal tea, fantastic. Water, fantastic. Coconut water, fantastic. I personally, during the 5 days, will be mainly, other than obviously my juices, I suspect I will only really be drinking a couple of different herbal teas and water. I drink a lot of peppermint tea. I'm a big fan of peppermint tea, and I can drink cups and cups of the stuff. And also, I've found a really nice cinnamon tea that I quite often drink before I go to bed. So that's where I'll be putting a lot of my focus. In terms of things alongside the juices. Is there a limit to how much you can drink? No, not really. Particularly if you've got hot weather like I've got here in Cheltenham in the UK, then drink as much water as you feel that you want to have. Really, there's no real limits on it. I would say as a minimum for me personally, I would say probably somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 pints, 2 litres, something like that, of either water or herbal teas each day. Potentially more, but I would say that's probably the minimum. Okay, so next question. Is it okay to make juices in advance and store them in the fridge? Absolutely. I myself, today, most of the juices I've been drinking, I actually made yesterday. So last night, let me tell the truth, my wife made for me last night in our Optimum 400 juicer. Particularly using cold pressed juicers like the Optimum 400, those juices are actually good for 2-3 days kept in the fridge. If you're using a centrifugal juicer, then ideally I would say you want to drink your juices in 12, absolute maximum 24 hours. But can you store them in the fridge? Yes, most definitely. You want to put them in an airtight container. You want to fill them all the way to the top, and you want to make sure it's got a tight seal on it. Essentially, when it comes to storing juices, there are 3 things that you want to avoid: light, oxygen, and heat. So keeping it in the fridge is perfect because it's going to be cold and it's going to be dark. So you're not going to have a problem with light getting in there. And finally, in terms of oxygen, as I say, the key thing is just basically to make sure that that container is completely full. If you haven't got quite enough juice, you can always top it up with some filtered water or mineral water just to make sure that there's no space left inside the container. One thing just to add to that, you can also freeze juices, but if you're freezing juices, you want to leave some space because the juice will expand as it freezes. And so, if you take a jar or a bottle and you fill it all the way to the top and you put it in your freezer, then you are going to almost certainly come back to find your juice on the inside of your freezer, and potentially some broken glass or broken plastic. So, if you're freezing, always leave some space for expansion, but otherwise fill things as much as possible. So Scott asks, after the reboot, how do you transition into solid food? Also, what is your diet like after the reboot? What does your daily meals look like? I think the first thing to say on that is, after doing a detox like this, a juice cleanse like this, the last thing you want to do is rush out and have a big meal. You know, your body's not going to thank you for that if you do. You've been resting your digestive system for a period of time. In the case of this particular detox, you know, it's 5 days. And at the end of those 5 days, you know, the last thing you're going to want to do is just have some great big lump that's going to sit in your stomach. So, you know, my suggestion for day 6, and I'll probably talk about this more later in the week, but my suggestion for day 6 would be to still start the day with a juice or a smoothie, and then maybe have a salad or something light and plant-based to eat during the day, alongside other sort of juices and smoothies. And then slowly over time, you know, increase the amount of solids, but keeping a focus on a high plant-based and potentially highly raw plant-based in those first few days. And then, you know, potentially introduce a few things like rice and stuff as time goes on. In terms of what does my diet look like on a day-to-day basis, it varies. I mean, I've been living this way now for around 5 years, nearly 5 years. I think the key thing to say really is most days, in fact, pretty much every day, I start the day with some kind of juice or smoothie. And then after that, you know, I may have another one for my lunch, or I may have a salad, or, you know, I may have soup. It varies. But on a typical day, I probably have a minimum of 2, maximum of, say, you know, 3 or 4 juices. And then in addition to that, I tend to have a healthy meal in the evening. But it really does depend on where I am, what I've got access to, what's going on in my life at that point in time. I try not to have rules, but rather to be flexible and to fit into the circumstance, if that makes sense. Julie says, I've been juicing for over a year now. I also eat a lot of raw vegan style meals. I've juiced for health and I love my new life, pain-free and med-free. I hope my hubby and 13-year-old would start to eat more healthy, but they don't. My son hates fruit and veg. He does drink more water now and has stopped drinking fizzy drinks. Any advice or tips would be great. It's probably not what you want to hear, but it's really difficult to make changes for people. You know, the person you're trying to change has to want to change. And if you're trying to force things on people, from my experience, it doesn't work. It didn't work with me. You know, my wife was getting healthy before I was, and my wife was making suggestions about things that maybe I should be considering eating. I wasn't interested. I think the best thing I can say is lead by example. You know, just keep doing the good things yourself, and hopefully your family will see the improvements in you, and hopefully that will inspire them to then, you know, embrace those things for themselves. Rebecca asks, at the end of the reboot, can I repeat it again for up to a month? Yeah, sure you can, Rebecca, if you want to, but I want to stress that you don't necessarily need to. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently of people doing extended juice fasts. You know, I think a lot of it goes back to Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, and then more recently with Super Juice Me. And I think depending on where you're starting from with your health, then actually doing, you know, 14 days, 28 days, 60 days might be the right thing for you to do. But it's not necessary, and it's not something that everybody should feel the need to do. You know, I've completely changed my own health, and the longest I've ever done on juice only is about 7 or 8 days. You know, I've never done 28 days, I've never done 56 days, I've never done 100 days, anything of that nature. I know people who have done that, who've had some fantastic results, so I'm not in any way criticising it, but I wouldn't say that it's something that, you know, all of us necessarily need to do to get great results from juicing. For me, the whole point of doing a juice detox like this is to kind of give a little reset that then actually makes you want to eat more healthily anyway. You know, and by incorporating juicing into a balanced lifestyle, you can still have fantastic results, even if it's only having 1 or 2 juices a day. So Mandy asks, what do you class as spring greens, please? These are spring greens. In supermarkets here in the UK, certainly the main 4 supermarkets, you can currently buy bags of spring greens for very reasonable prices, which is part of the reason for including them in this plan. If you can't find them, then any kind of sort of green cabbage or kale or even spinach will work as a suitable substitute. Talking of substitutes, Anne-Marie has asked, what can you substitute for watercress? Good question. I think in terms of the way it's been used in this recipe and the flavour from it, I would suggest potentially using rocket, because it's giving a little sort of very slight kick to the recipe that it's used in. So, you know, something like Rocket that's also got that sort of slight peppery taste, I think would work very well as an alternative. Anyway, I hope you've all been enjoying the first day of the 5-day juice detox, and I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. Peace, love and juice.